The National Association of Social Workers named Dick 2006 Northwest Indiana Citizen of the Year for his anti-war activism. At last year's conference, he gave his first talk for us, and it was an outstanding presentation on social justice, monetary reform, and he's going to continue that now. His pamphlet, Linking Social Justice to Monetary Reform, is in your conference kit, and there are more at the back of the room. Please welcome Nick Egnatz.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. Can everybody hear me okay? Linking social justice to monetary reform came about after I had the privilege of speaking here to the American Monetary Institute last year. I couldn't believe social justice. We have peace, a fair system where everyone has a chance. No one's left behind, completely behind. No one gets so far ahead that they lose sight of their brothers and sisters. Caring and cooperation are the hallmarks of our society. Mother Earth is cared for and sustained. Let's contrast that with social injustice. War, militarism, empire. Unfair system in which the cards are stacked in favor of the rich. Creation of an ever-expanding class of haves and have-nots. Wealthy have trillions, poor have debt. Or as my father used to say, rich get richer, poor have kids, when we played poker. Market worship and competition are hallmarks of society. Destruction of Mother Earth is outsourced as an externality of profit and production. Social justice, it's economic justice. You can't have one without the other. Economic justice, how can you have a just economic system if the monetary system is unjust? And a just monetary system equals the Need Act. That's what we're going to be talking about. Of course, we've been talking about that in this room for some time, but for some of the people who've been watching on, or are watching on video, hopefully maybe they haven't heard of it yet, so we will get to the Need Act. Let's talk about what kind of a system we have right now. Our monetary system, our money, virtually all of it is created out of thin air by banks when they make loans. The interest we must pay is not created with the creation of the loan. As the loans are repaid, the money's extinguished into the ether of the atmosphere. It is a system designed to what? To put and keep us in debt, both individually and collectively through our governments. Within the bank debt money system, okay, it's impossible for us as individuals and our governments to do anything other than get progressively further and further into debt. Money exists only as debt. Just accept that from me, and maybe somebody else will tell us the same thing. Therefore, if we pay off the debts, there is no money in the system. What? There is also not enough money to pay off all the debts. What again? Because money was not created with the loans to pay for the interest. John spoke about that. Even if we were able to pay off all our debts within this system, all the money would be extinguished. There would be no money for society to function. And for anyone to get out of debt within this perverse system, someone else somewhere must take out a loan and go into debt for that money to exist. This is social injustice. It is impossible to pay the debt. How can we pay off the debt? What do we have? We have 21 trillion in total government. That debt includes local and state and federal. 16.9 trillion personal debt. 38 trillion, doesn't count businesses, 38 trillion in total debt. Now, the Federal Reserve, they give us this M2 money supply. Money supply is 12.1 trillion. These are the latest figures that the Federal Reserve had. So we have $38 trillion, and we have to pay it off with a total of 12.1 trillion. That's going to leave us what? 29.9 trillion short of repaying. And if we did that, there wouldn't be any money in the system at all for society and the commerce to function. This is crazy. This is insanity. But you don't have to take my word for it. Mariner S. Eccles, who's this guy? He's on the cover of Time magazine. Of course, that was a few years ago. If I could read Roman numerals real quick, I could tell you what year. But anyway, he was the chairman, former chairman and governor of the Federal Reserve, 33 to 51 during the Great Depression. That is what our money system is. If there were no debts in our money system, there wouldn't be any money. Now, isn't that exactly what I told you? Of course, that's exactly what I told you. And I don't need to show you graphs and flow charts of how the banks are moving their money around or anything like that. We just need to take the word of the establishment people that are telling us, yes, what these guys are saying is the truth. Money exists as debt. Who's this gentleman here? Where did he come from? The Lost Science of Money. Stephen Zarlinga's tour de force book on money. He is the world's preeminent authority on money and money systems. And when he started out, he looked like that. And after seeing how bad they were, it did this to him. But Stephen is a wonderful friend and a great champion of ours. But he's not the star of the show, and we're going to get to the star of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Zarlinga researched and wrote The Lost Science of Money. Used 3,000 years of monetary history. Zarlinga concurred with Aristotle that money exists by law and not by nature, as gold, silver, or banker's fiat. What does that mean? Because at the first conference, they were all saying that, and I was trying to figure it out. I knew by law, I knew what that meant. That meant that money exists, that the government could create money as an abstract quantity. It wasn't backed by anything. Not by nature, gold, silver, banker's fiat. The nature part, that means money was a commodity. You know, like they talk about a gold standard that was supposedly existed many years ago, et cetera, et cetera. And from that, gold, the bankers saying that they had gold in their vaults, and they went to creating paper notes and giving them out, saying that it was backed by the gold, and they found out that they could give out lots more, and that's where this whole fractional reserve banking scam started from, that the bankers did. They found out that they could lie to us, that they could give out notes that said they were backed by something, they weren't backed by something, and that's how they justify now giving out notes that aren't backed by anything but us. The U.S. government, the full faith of the United States government. I don't even have a bill in my pocket to read. Anyway, Stephen began the American Monetary Institute. He wrote the American Monetary Act and encouraged Dennis Kucinich to put it into legislative form, Congressman Dennis Kucinich. So when I said Stephen wasn't the star of the show, and Dennis Kucinich, who gave a wonderful video presentation for us a little while ago, and he's not the star of the show either. And he is the best damn guy we've had on money in Congress since this Congress has been, since we formed our government. The star of the show, ladies and gentlemen, is in this pamphlet here, and it is called the Need Act. It is what they developed. That is the star of the show. We don't need any other reform. We need this because this gives us what we want. It gives us a decent life that we could pass on to our kids and our grandkids. And if we don't have the Need Act, we're going to continue to go to the other place. The Need Act has 3 reforms. The Federal Reserve System becomes part of the government. That's what most of us think it is now, or did until a short time ago. Bank creation of money as debt is decisively stopped. Banks will only own money that already exists. Again, exactly what most of us have been taught to believe happens now. And the federal government creates and spends into existence U.S. money in non-inflation deflationary amounts for the needs of the nation and its people. Again, what we mistakenly think is now happening. That's the Need Act. So is the Need Act, is it radical? Of course, the Need Act reforms are not radical. They're not radical. They're precisely what most of us have been taught to believe is going on now. And we're going to get into what we've been taught. What is radical is bank creation of our money as debt. That's radical. That is the cancer in our society that needs to be removed. My father was a cancer surgeon. He would have been 100 if he was alive today. He died 10 years ago. He was a cancer surgeon. He knew when you had a cancer, you had to take it out. And the only way to take it out is to change the money system so that money exists from the government as an abstract quantity to benefit our society, and not money exist as debt to make debt slaves out of all of us. That's what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. That's what social justice is. Well, let's see if anybody else agrees with us. Mariner Eccles agreed with us, and let's see what they said. Majority of money in the modern economy is created by commercial banks making loans. I could go on about this, but we're on a time constraint. That's what they said. Martin Wolf, Financial Times columnist. And what did he say? He's considered, you look him up on Wikipedia, one of the world's top financial writers. He wrote a column last year, Strip Private Banks of Their Power to Create Our Money. Sounds like these guys agree with this. Martin Wolf agrees with this. Jonathan Adair Turner, UK, was chairman of the Financial Services Authority, and all textbook assumptions are dramatic and wrong. They tend to assume that what banks do is take deposits from household depositors and lend it to borrowers. So he's telling them that they've been lying to us. Their assumptions are wrong in the textbooks. He even talked about it. He went back and got the textbooks and looked them up, and yeah, they are lying. And they assume that they're taking deposits and lending it to borrowers, but that misses the insight that banks create credit and money and purchasing power. So again, he's telling us the banks create money. And what else? That ignores almost entirely the fact that most credit extension is no longer funding business capital projects. And so what is it funding? Bubbles and speculation. Chicago Plan revisited. Chicago Plan, we talked about that. I think some of the other people have talked about that. This was a working paper from the International Monetary Fund. Now, I do have some people that have done some great work within there, bringing the light of day to what's going on in the world's monetary system. Jeremy Bennis, Michael Kumhoff, Dr. Michael Kumhoff, who's spoken at this conference, who's attended this conference before. And this working paper here comes to the same basic conclusion as Dr. Yamaguchi's work as this war. This is a result of our debt money monetary system created by banks, refugee crises. Isn't this a compelling picture, ladies and gentlemen? Poverty in the United States, austerity, inequality. These are the fruits of our monetary system. Environmental crises, that's a plural. An undemocratic democracy. This is the Illinois senator saying a few years ago, frankly, the banks own Congress. Senator Richard Durbin. Unemployment. And of course, debt. Always the New York Fed is represented there because Wall Street, they want to make sure that they got their finger on the pulse. And I say independent of who? It's independent of us. Of course it's an independent institution, completely independent of the people. We have no control over it at all. The only real money is the coins in our pockets. And why is that the real money? Because the Federal Reserve banks purchase these coins at face value. So for a roll of quarters, you get $10. For one quarter, you get a quarter. Now, when you're buying those when they're buying the Federal Reserve notes, what do they pay for two $100 bills? 12.3 times 2, 24.6 cents. They pay the government more for a quarter than they do for two $100 bills. Is that the kind of monetary system we want? This is absolute insanity for us. What the NEED Act does is social justice. They're the same. It creates 10 million new good-paying jobs. It may create many, many more. Jamie went into that, but that's a minimum figure. Rebuilding our country's crumbling infrastructure. And before I get in any further, because this is rebuilding, and I'm so glad that Jamie brought this out, that the American Society of Civil Engineers wants to rebuild the infrastructure in a sustainable manner. That they've made that commitment over the decades. Gives every man, woman, and child a citizen's dividend, should be 10 grand. And who does that bail out? Well, it bails us out for one thing, and we certainly need bailing out. Maybe those of us in this room don't particularly need it so much, so direly right now, but maybe a few of us do. But certainly we all have brothers and sisters and neighbors and people that we don't know in our communities that have been completely bypassed by this criminal system. But it also bails out me. When I'm not working anymore, but I've been a small businessman off and on for most of my life. It bails out small businessmen because what small businesses need, we don't need loans that we can't repay. We need our customers, the people in our communities, to have money in their pockets for the goods and services that we produce for you. That's what we want. We want a fair deal. And it commits to funding education and health care. It sends 25% of the newly created money to the states. Illinois is in this huge, huge deficit program that they can't get out of. legislature and the governor are at odds. And the same thing with the city of Chicago, they have the same things. And this provides interest-free financing for local governments to build schools, roads, libraries. Instead of closing these things, we could be building them. We just found Dr. Yamaguchi, the academic, and then we found this guy. Do you recognize him? Dr. Yamaguchi is an academic, and we need the academics to come and to work with the academics to get what our society needs. Here's Dr. Yamaguchi here. He put the AFC, American Society of Civil Engineers Infrastructure Repairs, into his advanced system dynamic computer model, and he is an international expert on this system dynamics computer model stuff. In fact, he graced us a couple months ago, I believe it was in July. He had been invited from Japan to go give a talk at MIT. He stopped here on the way back and gave a presentation to us. So he's internationally recognized as this. His conclusion, infrastructure repairs can be done, national debt can be paid off as it comes due without causing any inflation. I'm so glad that I just recently joined the Green Party with our friends here. Nobody in our two corporate political parties has any kind of a plan to pay off the national debt. But the NEED Act does. So we're not just talking to progressives, Greens, and people that want social justice. I'm so glad to have them in our audience. Who are we talking to? We're talking to liberals. We're talking, conservatives and libertarians. Because they want to pay off the national debt. That's their number one economic issue, is to pay off the national debt. And here we've got something that does it. And we don't have to borrow any money for it. Nobody in either corporate political party has a plan that funds putting 10 million of our people to work, or maybe probably a lot more than that. But the NEED Act does. That's why we need the NEED Act. There are 9 planetary boundaries that are either have been breached by what we're doing to the atmosphere, or are in danger of being breached. And we need to get these under control. In 2010, they voted and adopted Greening the Dollar to the party platform. It is essentially the 3 necessary reforms of the NEED Act. We hope that Green Party members and candidates are outspoken advocates of the NEED Act, because that's what gives us what we need, the entire range of social justice issues to be handled, that we can handle them. In 2010, they voted and adopted Greening the Dollar to the party platform. It is essentially the 3 necessary reforms of the NEED Act. We hope that Green Party members and candidates are outspoken advocates of the NEED Act, because that's what gives us what we need, the entire range of social justice issues. We want Jill Stein to do is just say, let's say that I support the NEED Act because it's in the party platform and it gives us what we want and it covers the full range. That's what we want to do there. We don't want any partial reforms. War and militarism can only be covered by the NEED Act. The NEED Act was written as nonpartisan legislation. Moving the NEED Act forward, that's for us. When the public becomes outraged over our educational activist efforts to the bank's debt money scam, Congress will follow suit. Thank you, Howie Hawkins, for giving us the history behind those greenbacks too. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Take my head off.